All right, pre-cal, as promised, I've got a video about how we're going to use the unit circle to find exact values. Now, we've talked about this in class a little bit, but I wanted to give you a video so that you would have it to refer to. So when we're finding exact values, let's start with something easy. What if I want the cosine of 120 degrees? Okay, so I'm going to start on the positive x-axis and I'm rotating in the positive direction because it's positive of 120. And I'm just going to go to 120 degrees. So that is going to be this ordered pair right here. Remember that the cosine value is in the x value position because it corresponds to this direction, left, right, as we look at our unit circle. And remember, we talked about how the triangle, formed, the right triangle formed right there, that the cosine corresponds to the x value and the y value corresponds to the sine. All right, so in this particular ordered pair, this is the x value of -1/2, so that is the value of cosine 120 degrees. Neato. All right, now let's talk about something like this. Let's look at the cosine of -120 degrees. Well, now we're going to move in the same amount of space, but now we're going to move in the negative direction. So we've got starting here, and we're moving, that's -90 plus another 30 degrees is right here. That is -120 degrees, and the cosine value is the same at -1/2. It's the same because on this side of the circle, all of the x values are negative. So that's why that looks that way. All right, now let's talk about something different. Let's look at the sine of -135. Okay, so we're starting here and we're moving 90 degrees plus another 30, so that's -120 plus another 15, that's -135. So that's right there. The sine value is the y value, so it's negative radical 2 over 2. So that shouldn't be too very challenging. Okay, now let's find some radian measures. Those are more fun. So I want the exact value of sine pi over 6. Okay, so this positive pi over 6, so that's right here. There's pi over 6. So the sine value is positive 1/2. Okay, let's go in the opposite direction now to see what that would look like. The sine of negative pi over 6 is going to be right here, and that is going to be -1/2. So I'm essentially reading the ordered pairs all around the circle. So let's consider sine of positive 90 degrees. Starting here, here's 90 right here, that's a 1. All right, it really is super duper easy. You just have to pay attention when you're finding the exact value of a negative that you move in the appropriate direction and that you count your angles. Remember that when we have a unit circle, all of these larger chunks here, okay, those are all 30 degrees. All the way around the circle. And then of course this is 30 degrees, so is this, so is this, and so is this, but then those are further broken down into 15-degree chunks to accommodate our 45-45 right triangle. All right, so keep that in mind as you move around the circle. All right, now we're going to talk about something that several of you struggled with when we were talking about this in class. Let's talk about our tangent values. Remember that we have a quotient identity that tangent x is equal to sine x over cosine x. Well, that means that tangent at any one of these ordered pairs is going to be the sine over the cosine. So let's talk about what this would look like. Let me erase all of this so I have room to work. All right, so I'm dealing with tangent. So let's talk about tangent at pi over 6. And this is the same as tangent of 30 degrees, okay? Same exact thing. Well, this is going to equal 1/2 the sine divided by radical 3 over 2, which means 1/2 divided by radical 3 over 2, which means 1/2 times the reciprocal. So that gives me 1 over radical 3. It is not good math practice to leave a radical in the denominator, so I'm going to rationalize the denominator. So I've got radical 3 over 3. So the tangent of pi over 6 is equal to radical 3 over 3. All right, so around the circle, I am just going to put my tangent values here. So tangent is radical 3 over 3, right there. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing for the other ordered pairs. So if I'm looking right here at this ordered pair, the tangent of 45 degrees is going to equal radical 2 over 2 divided by radical 2 over 2. And we know that that's just going to be 1. So your tangent value there is 1. All right, now we're going to look at 60 degrees. So the tangent of 60 degrees is radical 3 over 2 divided by 1/2, which means radical 3 over 2 divided by 1/2, written this way, radical 3 over 2 times the reciprocal, which is just radical 3. Just like that. Okay, now let's look at this ordered pair. So the tangent of 90 degrees is sine over cosine. We cannot divide by 0. So here, tangent is undefined. All right, now let's look at this value. So the tangent of 0 degrees, or 360, depending on how far you've moved, 0 over 1. So the tangent here is 0. We can divide 0 by a number. We just can't divide anything else by 0. All right, so these are the only values tangent is going to take on except for negatives. So when we look at quadrant 2, I want you to notice over here in quadrant 2, here's quadrant 2, when we reflect this over here, see, sine over cosine will produce the same value that sine over cosine does over here. It's just that now the cosine is negative. So instead of having radical 3, you're going to have negative radical 3. And here, instead of having 1, you're going to have negative 1. And here, instead of having radical 3 over 3, you're going to have negative radical 3 over 3. All right, so that means that your tangent value here is going to be 0 because those reflect. That doesn't change. 0 can't be negative. And then down here, again, these values are going to reflect. So this value is going to be here, and I've got a negative divided by a negative now, so it becomes positive radical 3 over 3. This is positive 1. This is positive radical 3. This is undefined again. This value, again, negative radical 3, negative 1, negative radical 3 over 3. So those are all of my tangent values all the way around the circle. So as we look at this, I want you to recognize that if I wanted the cotangent values, remember, are the reciprocal of sine. So they're cosine x over sine x. Don't overthink this. Things are just going to flip around. But notice that here, negative 1, or 1, negative 1, 1, negative 1, those are going to be the same every time. But now, in this position right here, cosine over sine, these are going to flip. So instead of being undefined here, cotangent is 0, and down here it's also 0, and now out here will be undefined for cotangent. And then for the other values, we just have radical 3 left and radical 3 over 3. So in this position where we have positive radical 3 over 3, the cotangent here is going to be radical 3, and the cotangent here is going to be radical 3 over 3. So their positions just flip, and they do that all the way around the circle. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of how we're finding exact values with our unit circle.